All right, good morning. Welcome back. It's nice to see all of you again today. We are going to greet one another in the chat box right quick, and then I'm going to ask for two volunteers to just share your greeting with the whole room and share your SEL strength area so we can get some voices into the room from the onset. So if you could share again your location, organization, title, and what SEL competency or activity or idea is a strength area for you so we can get a sense of who's in the room. And you can think really broadly about an SEL strength area. It could be, I'm really good at making friends. I'm really good at greeting people. I'm really good at making connections. I'm really good at, holding structures for people to feel like they can engage. So that can be really broad. But let's go ahead and start in the chat. It'll take a few minutes to get some information going. And while you're typing in the chat, I'll go ahead and give you just a little bit of information about me. My name is Aija Simmons. I'm an Oakland native. I've been working in Oakland Unified School District for the last 15 years as a teacher first, an elementary school teacher, and then at the district office as an instructional coach, and now as the program manager for social and emotional learning, primarily focused on teaching elementary schools. I've done SEL inquiry for several years and then developing teacher leaders through Mills Teacher Scholars Program and Bay Area Writing Project with the emphasis on social and emotional learning. So that's what brings me here to support you all today in thinking about your organization's SEL. So I am going to, I see we have the greetings coming into the chat. Let's hear from two people. So let me make my screen on gallery view. I want to see some faces. How about two more people just share and greet the room, say hi so we can hear some voices this morning. You can go ahead and come off mute if you would like to share and say hello.
I can go. Hi, everyone. My name is Tanya. I am with Tandem Partners in Early Learning, the program supervisor for Alameda County. And yeah, so the location was Alameda County, but I live in Walnut Creek, so calling in from Walnut Creek. And my strength is making connections.
Thank you. One more.
Good morning. I'm Tylisha. I'm located in Oakland and I work for Boost West Oakland, so it's in the name. My title is Executive Director, and also making connections is a strength for me.
Thank you so much for sharing. I feel like I haven't arrived in a place if I haven't greeted some people. I was raised that you walk around the party and say hi to everybody before you sit down. So I like to hear some voices in a room. So I feel like I've entered into the space and in partnership with all of you. So thank you. Take a minute to see who's in the room with us in the chat as we get ready to get started. So I want to again do an acknowledgement of the Ohlone people that we are bringing you this session from. We always like to ground in an open and a land acknowledgement and an acknowledgement of Ohlone people past and present and the land that they were stewards over. In this session today, this session is really an opportunity for us to talk to each other, to kind of chat, to reflect on some of the ideas that we got in the last section, and for you to really make deeper connections across organizations around what you tried to do. So this session is, we're gonna go into the framework a little more so that we can get through the second half of the MPACT framework that we started talking about last time. We're going to talk a little bit about equity because I realized after the last session with some feedback that I might need to make some equity ideas a little bit more explicit. And then you'll have an opportunity to be in an extended breakout for about 25 minutes to talk about what you tried and what you learned between sessions in small groups. Really turns out to about 5 minutes of conversation per person, but really a chance for you to talk about what you tried. And then we're going to give you some time to explore some resources that I curated for you to tap in and see, you know, and then we'll come back together and talk about what you noticed in that resources list. So just let's set an intention before we move any further. Given that you have an idea now around what this session is going to be about, just kind of set an intention for yourself. What do you want to get out of it today? Is there a question that you want to ask? Is there something you want to know from another organization or from me? Just take a minute and a couple of breaths just to kind of set your intention for yourself. And if you need a little accountability, you can write that intention down for yourself on a piece of paper, or you can give it to the room. You can put it in the chat box and we can help you hold that intention for today. So we'll just pause and take a deep breath and kind of set our intention for session. Okay, thank you. We'll be on the lookout for any intentions that pop up in the chat box. So I want to start us off with just a little bit of review of the core ideas that we talked about in the last session. And we went into this SEL to the core framework for organizations that allow us to talk through or think about at an organizational level how to build your practice around SEL. And the first one at the base of this pyramid is get in touch with your own social and emotional competencies. So if you remember, we looked at the CASEL SEL self-assessment so that we could really reflect and think about starting with the self. So whenever we do SEL work, we really start with our own identity, our own emotions, our own emotional skills that we are modeling in our organization. So we start with the self. Acknowledge diverse characteristics of the community and other learning contexts. Make a plan for SEL. Build in coaching and reflection for continuous improvement. Understand social and emotional development. Create a safe and supporting environment that is warm and welcoming. Number 6 is deeply connected to number 1. So understanding that our awareness of self, our ability to model openness, to present as open, is really connected to creating a safe and supporting environment that is warm and welcoming. And then to number 7, around supporting belonging and positive relationships, and then providing opportunities for voice, choice, and leadership in order for youth to engage are also really related. So I really want to touch on today, number 1, the idea of self. Number 6, safe and supportive environments. Number 7, belonging. And number 8, voice, choice, and leadership, because we're going to talk a little bit more about equity in a few minutes and the role of equity in social and emotional learning. So when I think about equity, when I talk about SEL myself, I'm always coming from a framework and a foundation of equity. And when we think about equity, equity is about outcomes and disrupting the predictability of certain outcomes, but that essentially is about belonging. When we think about privilege, when we think about the way that we think about outcomes, it's really about who feels a strong sense of belonging. So here's a quote from this book called You Belong. It says, "Do you believe that you belong? Because you do. You belong everywhere. Yes, you, with all your history, anxiety, pain. Yes, everywhere, in every culture, community, circumstance. You belong in this body. You belong in this very moment. You belong in this breath and this one. You have always belonged." This is such a profound quote because we know that SEL happens in a historical, a social, and a political context. And we have not always lived in communities where people have had a strong sense of belonging. We have a history of oppression in America. So what we're trying to do foundationally is recreate school environments, recreate one-on-one relationships so that we are able to begin and build with a sense of openness and a belonging and a feeling that all of our students and all of our families belong with us in this learning moment. So at the foundation of SEL is the self-awareness that is required for you to be able to ask yourself the question, am I making space for everyone? That is a question we should always be asking ourselves as we think about creating a warm, safe, and welcoming environment. This is in the SEL definitions from the Aspen Institute. It's a call for equity to be embedded in SEL. Can I get a volunteer to read this quote into the room?
Students.
Go ahead.
All students, and especially students of color, need to be in learning environments that reinforce their sense of academic belonging and send constant signals that they are valued for all their assets and deserving of investment and rigor. Improving learning environments by focusing on racial equity and integrating social, emotional, and academic development can improve individual academic and life outcomes and lead toward a more equitable society overall. As schools and systems continue to invest in social and emotional development, it is critical that leaders apply a racial equity lens as they consider both opportunities and challenges.
I want to invite you to grab some words and phrases from this that are resonating with you, or even that you have questions about, and put them in the chat. So let's pick up some of this language so we can practice using it and considering this idea of reinforcing a sense of academic belonging, because many of you are doing work directly with students, supporting students to increase their literacy and achievement. And at the foundation of that is making sure that students see themselves as belonging into literate groups, in literate communities, and that we honor all of their literacies that they currently have and allow them to bring all of those literacies to bear as we support them in their learning. So when we think about equity and when we think about our social relationships and our emotional relationships, we are asking ourselves, are we sending our students the signals that they belong? Or are we inadvertently giving them signals that they don't belong? And how can we apply a critical lens by watching responses from students? So a student will tell you in their body, in their openness, in their willingness to work with you, if they feel that sense of belonging in your relationship. And we often go straight to corrective measures of behavior or reaching out for additional support. But this is a call for us to actually be reflective and self-aware and ask ourselves, what are we doing in the space? How are we showing up in order for those students to feel a sense of belonging as we work with them? So that's a question that we can be asking the people that we work with. How are you showing up in space? What are the ways in which you made space for that student to connect with you and feel that strong sense of belonging? And how have you encouraged them to see themselves as belonging to literate groups or mathematical groups? What other supports have you given to reinforce that belonging? And please look in the chat and see what your colleagues are saying as we do this work together. All right, so then continuing on that thread of academic belonging and building these warm, safe environments where we can support our learners. These are the standard dimensions of equity that people really talk about. They talk about removing the predictability of academic success or failure. We talk about interrupting inequitable outcomes, eliminating biases and oppression, creating inclusive school environments for adults and children. And inclusive is a nice word, but inclusive really just means bringing people in the room. We have to go beyond inclusion to belonging. Belonging says you have number 3, you have unique gifts. You have gifts that are worthy of being used in this space. You have talents and you have interests. You have experiences that are valuable for all of our learning together. And if we go back to, hold on to number 3, discovering and cultivating unique gifts. But if we go back to this slide, number 8, the top of the pyramid is really what equity is about. Those unique gifts and talents that we allow for students to show up with voice, we're listening to them. Choice, we honor their experience enough to let them choose sometimes. So choose your own adventure should be a part of the learning all the time, and that we engage them in leadership, right? So this is the ultimate expression of whether or not you really are creating a space of belonging for students. Do they have voice? Is there some choice? And are they engaged in leadership? So those are things you want to ask yourselves about the way that your program is working. If you're really thinking about, is our SEL creating belonging? Are we doing the work of belonging and equity? And if the answer to that is yes, then we should be able to find ways you are elevating student voice, you are allowing them to have some choice, and to do some leadership. And that can even happen in small one-on-one sessions. You can ask a student, do you want to read this book or this book? Is there a story you want to tell me today? How was the session for you, right? So we often make judgments about students, but we can also ask students, how did this session feel for you today? How was our time? What did you like best about our time? What would you like to do differently in the next session so that they feel that sense of leadership, even in a one-on-one literacy tutoring environment, if that's the case for some of you? There can still be room for feedback and there can still be room for choice. So at the foundation, when I talk about equity, I'm really talking about belonging, and then those ways in which belonging is expressed: leadership, voice, and choice. So now let's get back into just thinking about how we do that when we're holding space for one another. So this MPACT framework is an offering from me for ways in which you can kind of be aware of self and make sure that you are showing up in a space, in a meeting space, in a tutoring space, in a way that opens that space up for your learners to actually feel their sense of leadership, even if that leadership is just over their own learning. And feel free to talk to me in the chat. I'm doing a little bit of talking today, but feel free to talk back to me in the chat or give me a reaction as we go. So we'll go through this right quick. We talked about presence and acknowledgement. And what I didn't remember the last session is to remind you, some of you may know this, but to remind you that we have these neurons, these mirror neurons, right? And what mirror neurons do is what I am going to call, in my own Oaktown language, they pick up on vibes. Mirror neurons pick up on vibes. They sense the vibe coming at us from the other party. They can even sense the vibe on a Zoom call, right? And our brains are trained to look for those vibes. So we look out into the crowd, and then culturally, you may look for vibes in different ways. Like I said at the beginning of the session, I want to hear somebody say hello to me. I want to see somebody go, what's up, Aija? That's my way of knowing, right? So that's the vibe I'm looking for. So presence is about, that reflective space and really asking ourselves to, let's take control over the vibe we're putting out, so that we're putting out what is needed in that moment. Sometimes it's openness, sometimes it's confidence, sometimes it's competence, so really just thinking about that. And then acknowledging our context. So who's here? How do we want them to feel? What's going on that we need to acknowledge? So we talked about those two the last time. The next one we want to talk about is connections. We are social and emotional learners. We heard a couple people say at the onset of the session that their SEL strength is making connections. Whenever we engage with learners or with our colleagues or in a meeting, we should be thinking about what are the connections that you want people to make. People need to connect. In order to really deeply learn a content, you connect it to self. You connect it to the schema that you already have. So you can think about, are there connections you need people to make? Like, oh man, this person is really on fire for SEL with kids, but this person has a really good sense of structures and organization and how to make an agenda. I really need those two people to connect up. So how will I create a meeting that actually allows them to come together and build on those strengths? Is there an idea that you really want people to sit with? So today, I really want people to sit with the idea that the expression of belonging is not just telling me that I belong. I want you to really think about the idea that the expression of belonging is listening to my feedback. It is allowing me to make some choices, and it is allowing me to step in a place of leadership, especially over my own learning, right? So what ideas do you want people to connect to? How are you going to connect them to those ideas? So thinking about, if that's how many times am I going to say that idea? Is that idea going to be on a visual? At what point am I going to allow the people who I want to connect to that idea to say that idea back to me? Because that means that the learning is being transferred. So how do I get them to say that idea back to me or that idea to another person? And then how are you designing this session to meet some of those goals? So thinking about that will help you, get people, even in a Zoom session, to get what you're trying to portray. So thinking about those connections. And then finally, time. Time is the big one. Time can make or break a relationship in a Zoom meeting or in a professional setting. So really thinking about how have you allocated time? Does your time allocation match your priority, right? Do not put too much in a meeting so that it feels like we talked about everything, but nothing got done. We didn't get to chew on everything. We didn't get to connect, right? We can build out conversations and sessions with colleagues and we can give them a lot of information, but if we hold that we are social and emotional learners, the only thing you got is the thing you connected to, right? And if what you connected to was a rushed vibe, I didn't really get that vibe, that's what you walk away with, right? So how do we prioritize so that we give people an opportunity to deeply connect to something, to not feel a sense of clutter, and to feel, and for us to think about what adjustments need to be made so that the time that you have facilitates the connection that you want people to make. So if I was going to have you write something down in the margin on this slide or to take a note, it would be, there needs to be time for people to make the appropriate connection, whether that's a connection with a person or a connection to a content. There needs to be enough time for the person to make that appropriate connection. And in order to show that they've made that connection, there should be an opportunity for them to say back to you the connection that they've made or tell it to someone else. So that's why those strategies like turn to a partner we use in the classroom are so important, because it takes the language from your ears and puts it in your mouth, which means there's been a different level of processing. That connection is even deeper when you allow people to connect a story to the idea, because we really are storytelling beings, right? We write our stories, we share our stories with others, and our ideas are reinforced when we can tell a story, right? So even asking a student, can you tell me a time in our session when you learned something, right? Or when you learned an idea, it allows them to be able to fuse those things together and restate what they learned. That is so important for our adults. Even if you want them to get a new process or get a new procedure or try out a new learning tool that you want them to use with students. Say you like, oh, we have this new initiative. We really want our tutors to be able to do this. Put them in a session and give them enough time to connect to that idea. Don't just tell it to them. Make sure that there's a connection so that they walk away feeling like they really have a strong sense of knowing, and even that they know what their question is, right? I've connected enough to now know, you know, what I really want to know is blank, because now you've turned the learning over to them. So presence, acknowledgements, connections, and time. You can explore each of these for a while. They're really big, juicy ideas. And we want to now give you a chance to do that. So I've presented a lot of material. So we're going to stop now and allow you to get into some groups based on the number that you chose, so that you can share with one another how you engaged with the ideas between sessions. And this can also be how you want to engage or what's coming up for you right now. So don't feel like we've given you a homework assignment that you have to talk about. That's not what it is. Right. It's just opportunities for you to connect to the learning. So you will be able to take your time and share in a way that feels really authentic to you. The main structure for equity will be that you have kind of 2 minutes to tell your story, whatever that story is, and then there'll be 3 minutes immediately following for there to be some group discussion, and then you'll go to the next person. Beyond that, have a conversation, take control over the space, learn from each other in a way that feels authentic and engaging to you. So let me stop sharing. I'm going to put these questions in the chat so that you have them. I'm going to stop sharing right now, and we are going to get some breakout rooms opened up. Before we open the breakout rooms, Jethro, let me just make sure that there are no questions.
Yes, please, everyone. If you have any questions, now's your time where you have us. See, everyone has signed up for a different room. So the 3 questions we have for you: what did you try? What did you learn? And what do you still want to know? So that's what we're bringing forward into this breakout room.
All right. And I will be here in the main room just in case there are questions. I'm happy to come into your room and answer questions and pop back out to the main room. But I'll stay behind just in case anyone has a question for me as you have your conversation. All good? All right, great. Enjoy your breakout time.
Okay, I think they're all in.
Okay, great. So this breakout will be like 25 minutes.
25 minutes, okay.
Yeah.
And I
How
put
many people are in each room? Because that's what really matters.
Yeah, so I put them into groups of 3 and 4. I think one has, yeah.
4 as long as there's no groups of 5, we should be okay.
Okay, yeah. Is there one that's 5? No, I don't think so.
Okay, so let's do 20 minutes, because how many 4s and how many 3s?
So let's see, there are 1,
We'll start the timer.
3, 4. There's 5 groups of 3 and 1 group of 4.
Okay, perfect. Let's do 20 minutes. And then at the 20-minute mark, let's give people a 3-minute warning.
Okay.
And we can bring people back in 22 minutes.
Okay, I'll let you all know in the 20 minutes.
Great, thank you.
Oh, and I can broadcast that message to everyone. So.
Woo. Wow, Aija.
What?
Like I just went to church.
Really?
Right.
Okay, people say that you feeling my grandfather was a pastor.
Yes.
No matter how I try, my cadence is church.
No, it was really like just stuff that, you know, it was just good. I was like, yes. Almost forgot I hadn't had breakfast.
Wait, my breakfast is right here. I'm kind of like, I would like to finish my breakfast, but
Oh
it's
my gosh, no.
we're done.
And I need to eat because I was forgetting. I don't forget, but I'm expecting. So.
Oh,
I
beautiful. Congratulations.
So I got a reminder from down below, like, hey, we haven't had anything yet. Why are you faking?
How far along? We should probably turn off the recording right now because we're done.
Oh, for real. Thank you for being so.
Ones that are about to be vaccinated.
Oh my gosh. It's hard making friends when you're an adult because I'm not from California.
We are coming back into the room. We're going to give people a chance to get back in. We're going to take a little break, but before we go to the break, we want to have some people share out. We're going to wait a second and get us back in the room. How'd your conversation go? All right, I hear some laughter coming back into the room. I'm with that. Yeah. I'm all for the joy. Yes. I asked a group of teachers, what does engagement look like in the virtual setting? And the teacher's response was laughter. And then they went on to explain how much cognition is involved in when you're laughing and how connected you are if you're laughing. So hearing that laughter, that's amazing. All right, so let's have a couple people share a takeaway from your group before we get ready to go on our quick break. Let's hear a couple takeaways. You can also put a takeaway in the chat if you don't want to share it out loud. I see Guy.
Yes. Thank you. And by the way, love your presentation skills. Thanks for, engaging us like this. And in our breakout room, it was so nice to just talk with colleagues and share. And we basically came up with, we wish we would have learned all this SEL stuff when we were young. And right now, how we're all under such stress and the challenge of even showing up with all the pressures we're under. And I'll just leave the final point of that sometimes it can be good when we're working with colleagues and we're trying to have meetings and figure out what we're going to do and say, hey, I just want to offer up that I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed with all this, and kind of open that up to the group, sharing your own vulnerability. And because very often, so many of us are feeling overwhelmed. So that was a really good theme in my discussion group.
That's amazing. That's great. It demonstrates self-awareness. I mean, and it also, that book that I shared with you, You Belong, beautiful book, but it talks about the paradoxes of belonging, right? So how can you actually demonstrate to colleagues that you can hold the paradox of simultaneously feeling both overwhelmed and ready to handle the meeting that you're in, right? You can do that. You can be both of those things at the same time. Like, I'm showing up here, I want to let everyone know I'm overwhelmed, and let's take some deep breaths and let's have some spaciousness and some openness. And here's the goal for the meeting that we have today, right? There's a way in which we can sit with those paradoxes and end by saying, now let's take a deep breath because I'm still feeling the overwhelm, right? And so we can hold those paradoxes of belonging and model them. No singular truth is true all at the same time, always. So thank you for sharing that. How about one more share out? All right, Sally, hi.
Hi. We were talking about belonging and how how that resounded with all of us. And one thing Sydney said with her ACTA non-verbal program was that the only real sign of a failure is if someone feels that they don't belong. And from in their program, and I work at the library, like the library belongs to everyone. And so I want the kids and all the patrons to feel that. And then Meg had pointed out that a program she had worked with, when you're dealing with people, when you're working with people who've experienced trauma, how much time it takes to get them to feel that, like, it takes extra staff and extra time to make that come across, and it's a little bit, that's a hurdle you have to work on.
Right.
And sometimes when we don't have the staff, or resources, it can be really tough to make sure people know that.
Yes. And to hold that awareness that we're doing this under limited capacity, but we have a deep desire for people to have a sense of belonging. So holding, again, you're talking about holding those paradoxes that we all have to learn to hold. So we're going to go on a break. While we're on this 5-minute break together, I put a link to the resources document in the chat, and it's also in your agenda. When we come back, we're going to do a deep dive into the tools that we have prepared for you. But we want to give you a chance to give your brain a break to kind of chew and bring some ideas together, grab some water, move your body, those kinds of things that we need to do in order to stay alert. So I'm going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to dip into those resources. So the only thing I ask for you to do is if you open the document link, then you'll have it ready to go. All right, if you are close by, you can give me a thumb up reaction or just turn your camera back on so that we know you're back here with us. Welcome back. Just a tip right quick, because we're getting ready to get into resources. You can use music to do many different things. Our bodies naturally line up and tune into music. You can use music in a way that produces a little bit more of a relaxing, calming sensation. If you need to invigorate the group, you can use music to help people amp up and get a little bit more invigorated, to bring a little bit of life into the room. You can play something cultural or relational, and it'll allow people to sink into a different aspect of belonging. So over your breaks, you can make strategic music selections. They even have something called alpha wave music that's supposed to bring you into a place of productivity. I haven't tried it yet, but I've heard about it. Like, it plays some sort of toots and beats that make your brain really want to be productive. So there's lots of ways that you can use music in a Zoom meeting to do different things. And if you have like something where you can just curate lists, where you have different things that you like that you've heard, then if you're in a pinch and you need an energizer right fast, you can go to that list and just click right in and change the vibe of a meeting through music. So just wanted to throw that out there as also a potential resource. So what we're going to do now is we have about 10 minutes for this, for you to explore the resources tool that I put in the link. So I curated some resources for you, and I just want to tell you a little bit about what's there. So it's roughly 3 pages. The first page is a curated list of links. And then the second 2 pages are some tips for reducing Zoom fatigue that I've written out for you. So here is how I suggest you use this document, but feel free to use it however you like. I suggest you make a copy that's for you. And then as you explore for the next 10 minutes, use the comment feature in Google Docs. So like highlight a row that you click into or whatever, use the comment feature and tell yourself what was in there that you liked, so that you hear like if you're scrolling through and you want to remember, you see your own commentary or your own comment notes around what was in that resource. So we're gonna spend 10 minutes just looking around and seeing what's there. And when we come back, we'll share with people what was in the resources that we liked. There's a lot of stuff. Some of the ones you click into, it's really just meant to intrigue you because there's so much there, like the Greater Good Toolkit for SEL Strategies. Poke around for a little while and write yourself a note if you're like, oh yeah, I like this, I want to do this activity with kids, but don't spend your whole 10 minutes in that one place. So it's designed to be that. Some will take you directly to one thing, and others are meant to be like, oh, this is an exposure, this is somewhere that Aija is saying we should come back to frequent or sign up, subscribe to their mailing list because they have great tools. So that's what we'll do for the next 10 minutes. And that's my suggestion for how you engage with that so that it actually becomes a living document for you, is just go ahead and put a whole lot of comments in. The great thing about using the comment feature is if you want to share the doc, you can resolve the comments and then they go away and you can share the doc without your notes. All right, are there any questions about this exploration? Okay, so let's take about 10 minutes to explore, and then we'll come back, share what we noticed, and then we're going to give you some team time to take some next steps. I am here in the main room. I'm here, just come back in and ask me any questions you have while you're exploring. All right, so I'm going to give us a chance to start to share. People are putting things in the chat. Thank you for shouting out the Training for Change. Training for Change has Google templates that I use all the time because they're interactive and they're already pre-formatted. So like if you want to do RJ and you want to put each student's name in a circle, they have some Google PowerPoint tools in there. So yeah, please poke around there and look at some of the suggestions that they have. Anybody else saw something that you thought was particularly helpful? Okay, no worries. Hopefully that list below of the strategies for reducing Zoom fatigue, you don't need them all, but you can use them strategically in sessions to help people connect and feel less anxious and irritated being on Zoom. We're gonna give you a chance now to go into some team time and think about what you wanna pull forward. So in your small team groups, here's a Jamboard. We're gonna ask you to just share some ideas toward the end of your conversation. So we'll send out like a banner that says, stop talking, put some ideas in this Jamboard. The Jamboard will be open for everyone so we can learn from one another. And there's also a link to the Jamboard in your agenda. This is time for you to think about what is the one idea that you really wanna hold on to? What are some opportunities you see for further action, and what is one next step you want to take? So those are the questions for you to hold in this quick breakout. Are there any questions about the breakout?
And I'll put those questions.
They're at the top of the Jamboard. So if you click into the Jamboard, and there's multiple pages, I'm making an assumption that people know how to use a Jamboard. That is not an assumption that I should make. So let me pause right quick. When you click into the Jamboard, the 3 questions are at the top. There are multiple pages so that you can click through. If there's not enough room on one page, same 3 questions are at the top. What you do on a Jamboard is on the side over here. Let me use a quick zoom feature. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Over here, if you click on the Post-it note, it gives you a sticky note. You can type whatever you want to type and it'll save it, and that sticky note will pop up live on the Jamboard. You can put as many sticky notes as you would like to share some ideas with the group around what you want to carry forward from your conversation. Someone has done a doodle. You can also use the pencil and do a doodle on a Jamboard. So you can also play around with the Jamboard on one of the pages if you just want to play around with the tool.
Okay, so I'm gonna put people into groups by your teams, and if you're not in teams, you'll have partners to talk with as well if you're individuals.
All right, thank you. Everyone, welcome back. My closing remarks are just sincere thank you. So thank you for your engagement and participation over the last 2 sessions. Feel free to keep putting ideas in the Jamboard throughout the day if you want to. I'm turning it back over to Jethro, but I really appreciate all of you.
And I also want to express my appreciation for every one of you. This is a new format that we tried out to go a little bit deeper and to have kind of intercession work, and I think it's been working well, but give me your feedback in those evaluations. The link is in your agenda. And lastly, before I leave, I also want to mention that we will be having our next member meeting, so just for the members, on March 17th. And we're going to be looking at the role of kind of the pandemic and the trauma that's been created for children, and how what we're seeing, how it's showing up for families, and the kind of solutions, things that we're doing to address that. So that will be the focus of our members meeting on March 17th. That should go out this week. And the next big quarterly meeting will be April 21st. So also keep a lookout for that. We'll do a big parent panel, teacher panel. It should be pretty cool, just around just the year of distance learning and what we're bringing forward. Sally's asking, can she share your resource list with colleagues?
Oh yeah, everything that you got here today is shareable. Please feel free to share all of it, no worries. So everything is linked in one place. I advise you make a copy that you can have control of the sharing. So yes, please do.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. I respect your time. Have a beautiful rest of your week.